Welcome to the Private School Leader Podcast, where private school leaders learn how to thrive and not just survive as they serve and lead their schools. I strongly believe that it is possible to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And my passion is to help you figure out exactly how to do just that, right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And I'm your host, Mark Minkus. So I want to ask you if this has ever happened to you. You're at a school event or some kind of big celebration, and you're surrounded by people. And if you're at school, you're surrounded by parents, you're surrounded by teachers, you're surrounded by students, and you could literally have hundreds of people around you, but you feel totally isolated and you feel really, really lonely. So I wonder if that's ever happened to you. I know that for me, I remember that one year I was at a Christmas concert and I got up and did the welcome, and I sat down near the back of the auditorium, and there were probably about 700 people there in that auditorium for the concert. But I looked around and I'm surrounded by people, but I just felt super lonely, isolated and alone. And here's the thing. Being a private school leader can be very lonely and a very isolating job. And even though that's the reality of the situation, it doesn't have to stay that way. And on today's episode of the Private School Leader Podcast, we are going to discuss 5 strategies to overcome feelings of loneliness and isolation as a private school leader. And I want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast every week. And I want to say thanks by sharing a resource with you. And this is a free 45-minute masterclass training, and it's called Winning at School Without Losing at Home. And this is a video webinar training. It's about 45 minutes long, and it's got guided notes. And I think it'll do exactly what the title says. It'll help you win at school without losing at home, and help you be successful and organized and energized at school, but still take good care of yourself and your family. So does that sound good to you? Go to theprivateschoolleader.com/winning to grab this free masterclass training, Winning at School Without Losing at Home. Again, that's theprivateschoolleader.com/winning. So we're talking about private school leadership and it being lonely and feeling isolated. And so I want to start by just taking a quick look at why is it so lonely? Why is private school leadership so lonely? And so reason number 1 is it's lonely at the top. There's a reason that that's a saying, it's lonely at the top, because the higher that you move up in an organization, the smaller number of colleagues or peers you have in your day-to-day environment. And if you're a division head, and especially if you're a head of school, there's only one head of school, and if you're a division head, maybe there's a couple of division heads, but the higher you move in the organization, the lonelier it is because you have fewer peers. So, okay, that's pretty logical. But speaking of the org chart, reason number 2 that private school leadership is lonely is because you can't vent down the org chart. You can't vent down. And so we know that even if we want to share frustration with staff, that damages morale. It can blur those boundaries, and quite frankly, it damages our integrity as leaders if we're venting to people that report to us. And so we can't vent down. It's lonely at the top. And then reason number 3 is because of confidentiality. And I don't know about you, but it feels really, really lonely when you are making a decision in private with information that's shared in private at a board meeting or an executive session of a board meeting, and then you have to announce that decision, and it's very public. The consequences and the outcomes are very public, and then you can't explain yourself and you can't defend the decision, especially when it's personnel matters or if it's a suspension or an expulsion. And so confidentiality in the role of being a private school leader, a lot of what we know we can't share, and we can't even share it with our leadership team necessarily. And so it's lonely because we have so many things that we have to keep confidential. And then reason number 4 why it's lonely to be a private school leader, it feels lonely sometimes, is because sometimes we feel like nobody gets it. And so between the board and the parents and the teachers and the students and all of your constituents, the grandparents, the alumni, we have such a unique role, and it's such a complex role. And I honestly believe that very few people can understand it like another private school leader. And I think actually our spouses, our partners, probably understand it better than almost anyone other than another person who leads at a private school. But I remember venting to my daughters one time about this crazy request that a parent had, and my daughter said, well, just tell them no. And I was like, you don't understand. You don't get it. And so it feels lonely when nobody gets us. And then another reason why it feels lonely to be a private school leader sometimes is because being vulnerable feels risky. So I don't know about you. I'm just going to speak for myself, but being vulnerable as a leader at my school felt risky. It feels risky. And we're supposed to be calm, cool, and collected, and strong and composed and, cool under pressure and all those things. And so if that's the persona that we're supposed to project, calm in the midst of chaos, it makes it pretty hard to share how you're really feeling or to ask for help. I know that was true for me. And so when we're just carrying that burden alone and we're, putting on that, sticking out our chin, the stiff upper lip, whatever you want to say, strong backbone, that can be lonely because of all the things that we're keeping inside. And then 2 more reasons why it can feel lonely and isolating is number one, I think we're on number 6 right now, but the next reason is time constraints. We're already working crazy number of hours, and then there's the weeknights and the weekends, there's all the events, there's all of the different things that we have to do. And actually having time for ourselves or time for our family, or certainly like social time with friends, it just feels impossible because when are we supposed to do that? We don't have time for that. And then finally is just emotional and physical exhaustion. If you've given your all at school, you usually feel too drained to want to connect. And here's the other thing. There are a lot of introverted leaders out there, and introverts are drained by all of those social interactions during the school day. And then by the time the school day ends, you don't want to say another word and you don't want to hear another word. And so then we kind of just retreat. And again, I'll just speak for myself, but I know that when I was lonely and felt most isolated, instead of opening up, I would have the tendency to just kind of retreat even more into that silo. So those are some of the reasons why. And I just want to mention quickly the ways that loneliness and feelings of isolation impact our mental health and our physical health. And I want to be really clear about this because I think that sometimes that we think, well, this just goes with the job and being lonely, it's just part of the gig, right? But I just want to shine a light for a moment on the long-term mental and physical health impacts of chronic loneliness. It has real consequences. This isn't just about feeling a little bit sad or whatever. It's like chronic loneliness has real consequences. And so the research shows that being isolated is a significant contributor to anxiety and depression. In some states, prisoners that are put in solitary confinement, that's considered cruel and unusual punishment. Even the most hardened criminals The thing that most of them try to avoid is that solitary confinement where they're 23 hours in the cell and 1 hour of exercise by themselves. And so there, from a psychological standpoint, it can definitely contribute to anxiety and depression. And then we talk from time to time about stress on this podcast. And so our stress levels go up when we don't have outlets for all those emotions. And so if we're alone and we're lonely and we're not spending time communicating, having conversation, fellowship, friendship with others, then that's all staying inside. And when it builds up, then, and it lingers, then the high cortisol levels and adrenaline levels in our body lead to significant health concerns long term. Another thing that can be impacted is our sleep. That, again, lonely people experience more disruptions in their sleep, which then leads to being more tired during the day and a lack of focus. And then maybe we make some decisions that weren't the best decisions. And so it all kind of goes together. And then also, there's research to support that loneliness is linked to inflammation being worse and then taking a longer time to resolve itself, and also having weaker immune systems or a weaker immune response to something that's attacking our immune system. And so to prove that point, there's a documentary, I'm not sure if it's on Netflix or Amazon, but it's about blue zones. And you may have heard of blue zones. There's like 5 or 6 areas in the world where people, many people, a ridiculous number of people, live to be over 100 years old. And in this documentary that I saw, they went and they researched it. And what was it? What they ate? Was it their level of activity? What was it? And the common thing that they found across cultures, because it was in different countries, these different blue zones, the thing that was most consistent was socializing, friendship, communication, hanging out, relationships, and it was community. And so, again, we talk about community and belonging and how important that is in our schools, but then we don't experience that ourselves as leaders. Isolation and loneliness can lead to cognitive decline over time and also a higher risk of burnout, because if we're lonely, and I know this is true for me, when I felt more lonely and more isolated, then the challenges feel bigger and heavier. And then I would just get more tired and I would be in this loop. And then, it led to burnout. And so then quickly, and this is kind of a no-brainer here, so I'll just do a very quick touch on the benefits of social connection. Honestly, it's like the opposite of everything that I just listed, as far as the immune system and sleep and anxiety and depression. So just flip that and the opposite of all of those things. But, other benefits of social connection is the emotional support that we get. When was the last time that you felt heard? When was the last time that you felt seen as a private school leader or even as a person? You're so busy, and then you run out of energy and you run out of time. Another benefit is of sharing in community is encouragement, and we know how much people appreciate it when we intentionally encourage them. When was the last time that you felt encouraged or that someone encouraged you intentionally? Obviously, that helps us to stay more motivated and hopeful. I think being hopeful is a really, really important part of our jobs, hopeful and optimistic. But the harder the season at school, if it's a crisis, if it's something that's, really hard that's going on at school, then it's much more difficult to be hopeful and to be optimistic. And then that is harder to feel when we feel lonely. And then finally, as far as the benefits of actually investing in relationships and communicating and pouring into this aspect of community and friendship, I'm just mentioning laughter and joy. And I've said it before that, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, that there's joy on your campus. It's just not in your office. And we just need to laugh sometimes. And so laughing with someone that you care about there's no substitute for that. Having a good laugh with someone that you care about and they care about you, there's no substitute for that. But how long has it been since you've experienced that? So I just want to try to get you thinking. I'm not trying to get you feeling bad about yourself or hopeless or discouraged about your job. I just usually try to lead with honesty and transparency and to shine a light on the problem and kind of give you the bad news first and then give you some strategies that can help. So let's talk about 5 strategies to overcome feelings of loneliness and isolation as a private school leader. So number 1, our first strategy is to be a visible leader. So if you're a visible leader, you are going to be less likely to feel lonely and isolated. And so you might be saying, okay, well, yeah, but I'm interacting with kids and teachers and, those aren't really like my best friends. Those aren't my preferred people. But social interactions are social interactions, okay? And you're going to feel less lonely if you're out and about. They don't have to just be with your spouse or partner or best friend or sister or brother or mom or dad or your kids. These social interactions on campus make a big difference. And so I'll say it again, there's joy on your campus, it's just not in your office. When you're in your office, you are probably less than 50 feet away from happy kids doing interesting things. At any time that you're on campus, you're probably less than 100 feet away from happy kids doing interesting things. But then days can go by when you're not interacting with those happy kids doing interesting things. And I get it. Maybe you're so slammed and so busy in your office that you just can't get out of your office no matter how hard you try. And that's where I think we need to schedule our good intentions. And so you've heard me talk before about scheduling pop-ins and then keeping that appointment with yourself and not negotiating and just, having it be something that you just can take it or leave it. I think we need to prioritize it. And so not only that, but also you've heard me talk about how, for me, recess and lunch was a non-negotiable, and that as a division head of 4th through 8th grade for the last 12 years of my career, that I made sure that I was out and about during recess and lunch. And it just had so many positive benefits for me socially and emotionally, and just being able to touch base with my teachers. Hey, how are you? Read their body language. And then, hang out with the kids, and just seeing kids have a good time on campus is a good dopamine hit. So one of the ways to overcome loneliness and isolation is to be a visible leader and to have those social interactions with the kids and with the teachers on campus. Number 2, and this one, you might roll your eyes at it, but hang in there with me. The second strategy is to be more social at school. Be more social at school, okay? So here's where I'm going with this. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, because I know that as professionals, we can't be friends with the people that we supervise, because then that causes problems and perceptions of, favorable treatment and so on and so forth. So I get that part. But it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be that, well, I'm not going to be friends with them, and so I'm going to take it to the other extreme, and I'm not going to be friendly with them. You can be social at school. You can interact. You can laugh at stuff. You can know how things are going with that person in their life and all that. And most of you that are listening are probably pretty good at that. But I think that some of us, especially if there are some prickly people on our campus, that sometimes, I'm just going to say it, that we kind of stay in our office because we don't want to interact, because there's a teacher that's an energy vampire, and they're just going to suck all that energy out of you because they have a complaint about stuff. So I've talked to coaching clients who I got to get out of my office, but honestly, when I go out, it's, this person and that person. And yes, it's a mixture. You're going to get people who say, oh, I have this issue, and so on and so forth. But I just think that if we think about it this way, 2 parallel train tracks, colleagues and friends. And so I know it's weird to think about the people you supervise as colleagues, because typically we think about colleagues as on the same level of the org chart as we are. But coworkers, people you supervise, people that are on the same level of the org chart, and even your boss, your head of school, or your board chair, they can all be people that we are friendly with and social with at school. I'm not recommending we socialize with people that we supervise outside of school, but we don't have to pretend that we're this unfeeling robot and that we're just not going to be friendly or social or have a good time. It is possible. And I really enjoyed the people that I worked with and the people that worked for me. And it isn't the easiest thing in the world to do, but I think sometimes leaders go running in the opposite direction and don't want to be social at school. And then also we can be social with parents while still maintaining professional distance. And I have a couple of coaching clients that they hate May and all those year-end events because they hate making small talk. I see you. I get that. But when it comes to carpool or those events, that's part of being a leader in your division or your head of school or a principal, is having those social interactions. And even though it feels like it's not good for us, it is good for us. Okay, so those two, the first two, number 1, be a visible leader. Number 2, be more social at school. I led with those. Those are kind of on campus aspects of ways to decrease that feeling of loneliness and isolation. And then the next 3, our strategies, number 3, 4, and 5, are going to be more things that can happen off campus. And so strategy number 3 is to connect with family and friends. No brainer, right? But I want you to think about quality and quantity. So as far as quality, when it comes to time with family, how present are you? How tired are you? How distracted are you? Probably a lot, okay? And then that, I know from personal experience that when my daughters were still living at home, I'm distracted, I'm checking email on my phone, and I'm not really present with them and interacting with the family or interacting with my wife. One of the things that I believe can be a real game changer is when you want to be less distracted and you want to be more present, is to put your cell phone out of reach from wherever you are standing or sitting. I just want you to try that and give it a week or 2 and see if it makes a difference. Most people that I've suggested this to that actually do it, almost without exception, they report that it makes a big difference and pretty quickly. So to be more present, to be less distracted, I'm just suggesting that at home that you start putting your cell phone out of reach when you're engaging with others that are in your inner circle, your loved ones, okay? And then the second thing within that strategy of quality is to decide when you're going to leave for the day. And you've heard me talk about having your index card. I'll link that episode in the show notes at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 151, where it was the 4 productivity hacks for busy private school leaders, and one of them was the power of the index card. And on the day or every day, I write on the index card the date, I write my compelling why, throwing starfish, and then I write the time that I'm planning to leave for the day, and then I put it into my calendar. Because Parkinson's law says that the task will always expand to fill the allotted time for the task. And if you don't have a time when you're going to leave and you're intentional about deciding that, then you're always going to stay at school later than you want to. And I'm not saying that you can always leave at the time that you say you're going to leave, but if you have a time and you write it down and you put it in your calendar and the buzzer or the notification or the thing pops up on your screen, the calendar reminder, we are much more likely to leave when we want to leave than just look up and be like, oh, it's dark outside and I had no idea I was working for 4 hours. So if we leave at a designated time more often, we'll have more left in the tank, which will increase the quality of our time with family and friends. And then quantity, connecting with family and friends, quantity, how much time? How much time can we spend with them? And I just want to make one suggestion, and that is to multitask during your commute or during errands. And I'll say that one more time, and then I'll explain what I mean. I'm suggesting for quantity of time to connect with people that you care about, that we can use technology to multitask during your commute or when running errands. And so what I used to do, I had about a half an hour drive to school and home from school. And I wouldn't do this in the morning, but I would do this a couple of afternoons a week. I would, let's say, call my daughter. And I had headphones in. I didn't FaceTime because my eyes are supposed to be on the road. But I would have my headphones in. I would call my daughter, one of my daughters that was living out of state. Or one afternoon, I might call my mother-in-law, or I might call my father-in-law. And it wasn't like all the time, and I didn't have it be like Monday is this person and Tuesday is this person. But I would do that during my commute, and then sometimes I would do it during running errands. And then sometimes for a while I had kind of a little bit of a drive to get to and from church. And so then coming home from church on a Sunday afternoon would just multitask, call someone, and check in and touch base. And how are you doing? How's everything going? Because these people, especially the ones who aren't living in our house, weeks turn into months. And then it's like, man, I haven't talked to that person in so long. And they matter to you. They matter to you. But life gets in the way. And so connecting with family and friends, quality and quantity. Okay, strategy number 4 on our list of 5 strategies to help you overcome feelings of loneliness and isolation as a private school leader. Strategy number 4 is to talk to other private school leaders. So how are you going to do that? Well, some of you have an affinity group through NAIS or ACSI or the Catholic School Education Association, or whatever governing organization you have for your school, or if you're a faith-based school. Maybe you have an affinity group. Maybe there's other leaders in your area that every once in a while get together. But I also want to propose a solution, if you don't have one of those things or that's inconvenient, is that I just want to mention the PSL Pro membership. And PSL Pro is a membership community that helps private school leaders, and it helps them go from feeling stressed out and discouraged and lonely to feeling energized, fulfilled, and supported. Now, I copied and pasted that right off of my website, but that's what it is. That's what it does. It's a community of private school leaders, and we actually get together live once a week on Zoom. And so one week it might be a live masterclass. Twice a month we have a thing that's called the We Get It Roundtable, where you just come, and if you need some encouragement, or if you come, you can give some encouragement. We have a live group coaching session once a month. We have a live Q&A once a month. Other private school leaders showing up for each other in a space saying, I see you. That happened to me. I hear you. I'll pray for you. I want to email you, and them encouraging each other, texting each other, and creating relationships in that digital space that's the PSL Pro membership community. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there that can also help you grow as a leader. But right now we're talking about how can we help you feel less lonely as a leader? What about hanging out every once in a while, just for an hour? Every once in a while, it doesn't have to be every week, but actually hanging out with other private school leaders who are going through the same stuff as you, or went through the same stuff as you, and can encourage you. So I think, let's put it this way. I'll just tell you this, that the highlight of my week is when I'm on one of those live calls and I'm seeing private school leaders show up for each other and encourage each other and support each other. And so if that's something that sounds interesting to you, all of that is, it's about $1 a day. It is $1 a day for, if you get the annual rate, $37 a month for the monthly rate, and privateschoolleader.com/membership. And so, again, $1 a day for you to have the opportunity to connect with other private school leaders. We have a community there. We post different things like that. If that sounds like something that, hey, maybe that's something that I want to do to feel less lonely, privateschoolleader.com/membership. And then finally, number 5, our 5th strategy is to get professional support. If you're feeling profoundly lonely and isolated, and that's starting to turn into discouragement and maybe anxiety or even depression, you might need to talk to a therapist or a counselor or a pastor or someone who is a mental health professional who can listen and who can help you. What you do is a lot. Our jobs, they're a lot. Okay, objectively, they are a lot. They're complex, they're stressful, they are exhausting. And so I always say everyone has stuff, it's just different stuff. I know early in my career, I thought that it was like a sign of weakness to like talk to a therapist, and that's a bunch of bull. And I wish that I had talked to a therapist, sooner. And so it was losing, 3 sisters in 3 years that led me to talk to a grief counselor. And then that got me talking to a therapist, and I still do, once a month. There were times where it was a lot more frequent than that, but I'm not saying you need to, but I'm saying that if you're struggling, it's a lot. And there are also a lot of options right now. And so my point is that it used to be you had to get in your car and drive into a city or drive across town and go and be there at a daylight hour and leave school and all the other things. Now you can do it on the phone, on Zoom. I've never even seen my therapist's face. I talk to him on the phone. And there's also BetterHelp.com is getting pretty good reviews because they can match you with a therapist, and you can check and see if that's covered by your hospitalization. But most schools, mental health services are covered by your hospitalization. It's a benefit that is needed, and that I'm just encouraging you. It's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of intelligence if you ask for help. And sometimes the help that we need as private school leaders exceeds what our spouse or our partner or our best friend can do by being a listening ear, and we need to talk to somebody else. So our big takeaways for today's episode: the 5 strategies to overcome loneliness and isolation. Number 1, be a visible leader. Number 2, be more social at school. Number 3, connect with family and friends, and we talked about quality and quantity. Number 4, talk to other private school leaders, and I mentioned the PSO Pro membership at theprivateschoolleader.com/membership. And then number 5 is to get professional support if needed. And your call to action is to spend 15 minutes this week just reflecting on which strategy is the one that's most likely to make a difference for you, and then just take one action to implement that strategy. And a final reminder, again, PSO Pro membership, community, private school leaders showing up live once a week, plus a bunch of other stuff in there for $1 a day, privateschoolleader.com/membership. And then another reminder, I want you to grab your free 45-minute masterclass called Winning at School Without Losing at Home, with the guided notes and the webinar video for you for free over at theprivateschoolleader.com/winning. That's theprivateschoolleader.com/winning. And the show notes, privateschoolleader.com/episode 151. You can follow me on Instagram at theprivateschoolleader. It would be a huge help to the podcast and to putting this out as suggested content for leaders all over the world if you would write a review and rate the podcast wherever you listen. And then finally, you know what I'm going to ask, if you would just please share the link to this podcast episode or to the podcast in general with another leader in your life or a rising leader at your school. And I've been your host, Mark Minkus. I appreciate you and all the hard work that you're doing. And I just want to say thank you for taking some of your precious time to join me here today. And I'll see you next time right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And until then, always remember to serve first, lead second, and make a difference.